You may have seen me using Conditional Finality a lot recently, the raid exotic from Root of Nightmares, specifically in build videos. I've been struggling to come up with a video for this gun since I got it because I just haven't really known what to say about it other than it's good. It's like really good. So let's explore this weapon and why I think it's one of the best weapons that's come out of Destiny as a whole in recent memory. First, a look back at previous raid weapons. Touch of Malice was the latest one and came out kind of with a whimper, but I think a lot of people saw this coming because we already knew what the gun was and how it performs, even dating back to D1. Before that, we had Collective Obligation, which at launch was good, but not good enough, and has since received buffs to make it a very strong gun for Void playstyles. Before that, we had Vex Mythoclast, and this also came out a little undertuned, receiving buffs and then becoming really strong, and it still kind of is. Then we had Eyes of Tomorrow, which never really found a place in the world outside of Gambit. Before that, it's Divinity? I think Divinity, which has been a monster since release, but for different reasons to other weapons. Before that, we had Taraba, which just very recently gained some steam. And before that, it's Anarchy, which was a beast for multiple years, arguably a top 5 weapon in the history of the franchise. And then we had Legend of Acreus, which is either the best weapon in the game for boss damage or definitely not the best weapon for boss damage. So if you notice a trend here, Conditional Finality is the first special weapon exotic since Divinity and the second one ever in D2, but I'm going to say it's the first true special weapon since Divinity has a really specific role. A lot of the other weapons that came out were either undertuned at launch or weren't exactly the most fun to use. Anarchy was really good. I don't know how much fun it was. The primaries that came out launched undertuned, then got buffed, but their initial impressions were lukewarm. Conditional has come flying out of the gate. Not only did it come out well-tuned, but it is also incredibly fun to use, and it's very, very good. How good? Like best PVE shotgun in the game good. Like arguably best traditional special weapon in the game good. So what's it do? The first shot is a stasis shot. If you hit most of the pellets in the shot, you will freeze the target. The second shot is a solar shot. If you hit most of the pellets, you will ignite the target. So even from those interactions alone, you can see why people are having a blast with this weapon. It has synergy with both stasis and solar builds. While freezing a target isn't a terribly difficult task for a stasis build, making ignitions happen is a bit more difficult. So just being able to shoot something and then ignite it and proc a whole bunch of stuff is incredibly good, not to mention the AoE effects of doing so. Shotguns in PvE for the last, I would say, several years have been nothing really to write home about, even if their potential damage or DPS is pretty much in line with or even slightly better than other special weapons, specifically slug shotguns. The reason for this has mainly been the fact that it has never been worth the risk in endgame content to get that close to an enemy. Fusion rifles can do things much safer. They can get reservoir burst for a little extra damage. They also now have things like chill clip, which not only bring the same damage as a regular fusion, but extra utility. It's only been recently that trench barrel was made relevant again to some degree, but even that has some hangups, like needing to stop shooting to punch a target again. 1-2 punch is more of a means to an end where you're not really using the shotgun for its damage, but rather to activate a different thing. Slug shotguns have some benefits over regular shotguns in that it's a lot easier to get a max damage crit out of one, but even those are still not that amazing over any other generic special weapon in the game. Also, pre-Lightfall, most of the time, you weren't going to have any anti-champion effects on a shotgun. I think we had it one time, Unstoppable. The special slot was dominated by Arbalest once it got anti-barrier rounds, and even in places that didn't have anti-barrier champions, it was still really good. There was simply no place for a shotgun in anything that had champions unless you were running some sort of maybe 1-2 punch setup. In comes Conditional Finality. This thing feels like the super shotty from Doom with its 2 shots, reload animation. The look of the gun itself is fantastic, and it is overall Really satisfying to use. Bit of a skill gap on it as well, since you can manually reload the weapon by mashing the reload button after firing either shot to reload faster, as opposed to waiting for the game to start the reload process for you. But if shotguns are so bleh, why is conditional breaking that model? Well, because it actually deals a lot of damage. I did some quick Kalli testing, everyone's favorite boss damage testing target, just to see what kind of damage this thing is pumping out. Some quick notes on the rate of fire. I know that this gun says it fires at 165 RPM. It 100% does not fire at that speed. I don't know why it says that. It doesn't. It's more like 55 RPM. And if you're mashing reload at the optimal time, you can shoot 2 shots, reload, and be ready for the next shot in about 2.66 seconds. We're going to call this 2.66 second time window a cycle. If you have the ability to, you should absolutely be mashing reload as you fire that second shot to reload faster. Each shot is 996.5 damage per pellet times 12 pellets. That's 11,958 damage times 2 shots. We'll talk headshots in a moment. These are body shots. Then we have the shatter and ignition damage, which is 10,682 shatter and 11,729 ignition, which sounds awfully close to the damage number I just said for an individual shot of the gun. Yeah, almost half of this weapon's damage is in the shatter and ignition effects, meaning not fully connecting with your shots is devastating to your damage. Either way, let's add all that up, all those numbers. 46,327 damage in a cycle. A cycle takes 2.66 seconds, so let's divide, and we get 17,416 DPS for body shots. This is sustained DPS. We're already including the reload. This number's locked in. Now let's look at something like Ikelos. Also 12 pellets. We'll do a body shot, each pellet doing either 690 or 699 damage. I don't know why the discrepancy, but it's 8,271 damage in this example. Multiplied by 8 shots, that's 66,168 damage in 3 seconds, which is how long it takes from the first frame of the first shot being fired to the first frame of the final shot being fired. That's DPS of over 22,000. But we're not including a reload in that number, whereas with conditional, we did. It takes over 5 seconds to fully reload this shotgun, about 5.66 seconds, and once we include that reload, our DPS with this gun plummets to 7,640 DPS. This is our true sustained number, which is 10,000 less than conditional. If we throw crits into the mix, both of these shotguns only have a 1.1x multiplier, so not really a huge difference maker. Slug shotguns, on the other hand, have a 1.75x multiplier, so what about them? Well, to keep things brief, unsurprisingly, something like Heritage is still not pumping out as much damage as Conditional Finality under the same conditions. In fact, Conditional Finality's sustained DPS is better than Heritage's one magazine DPS. So including reloads, Conditional is still cranking out more damage than Heritage without reloads. Again, this assumes you're hitting enough pellets per shot to proc, freeze, and ignition. I know this was a very quick damage check, but it's still one that is pretty conclusive. And you can really feel the power of this shotgun when you're using it compared to other shotguns or even other special weapons in general, like fusions or snipes. Not only is it cranking out all of this damage on high priority targets like champions, it's also giving you utility or subclass effects, which makes the risk of getting up close to targets worth it. When you can endlessly freeze a target or endlessly stagger them through damage and ignitions, you can afford to take more risks. And with Strand and Woven Mail being a thing, you have never been safer against tough targets. You're not even this safe in a super. Woven Mail is that level of good. Also, this thing torments unstoppable champions, as unstops will be stunned by both shatters and ignitions, but it can also stop barriers via freeze, at least for a very short time. There's a reason I've been struggling to make a video about this gun, and that's because I have very little to say other than it's just so good. It's one of the most fun and satisfying weapons I've ever used. If I think it's even within the realm of possibility to be effective with this shotgun in an activity, I'm gonna put it on. And I'm gonna be wearing a build that will make use of its secondary effects. I was doing a minus 40 power level GM challenge with some friends when GMs first launched, and ran out of revives during the pre-nerf Mars Heist Battleground. I had to solo the last 30% of this boss, and I did it with Strand and this shotgun. I did all of the GMs at minus 40, alright, minus 38 technically, with everyone on my team using this shotgun. GMs were not that bad. At minus 25, it is more than reasonable to use in a GM experience. You've seen me using it in recent build videos, in Master Lost Sectors. I use it in the Master Raid. What else can I say? What else is there to say? Some bonus facts about it. The pellet spreads are different depending on which shot you're shooting, with the stasis one making a triangle and the solar one making a circle. Next, you can trigger both the freeze and the ignition even if you are well out of range. The pellets need to hit, but there's nothing that says they need to deal a lot of damage. Also, fun facts that I yoinked from Reddit, no backup plans will get charged really quickly as the ignition effect counts as shotgun kills, and holster mods can make it so you always have the solar shot on deck in case you want to just spam ignition shots. Not something I really want to keep track of that much mentally, but it's there if you do. When it came to PvP, this thing was performing better than I expected, but is it that much better than a well-rolled or crafted shotgun? I'm gonna guess probably not. I'm sure some of the Omega PvP lords out there are gonna hit me with some hardcore stats of like, oh, this thing has more range and this and that. You don't come to me for PvP reviews. In the limited time that I have PvP'd with it, I can't recall a time where I killed someone with a solar shot and that caused an ignition, and that ignition killed someone, or anything like that. The odds of that happening, I think, are pretty low, pretty specific, and I'm not really going to encourage its use specifically for that effect, but its handling is pretty ridiculous for you handling fiends out there. Someone's rushing you with a shotty of their own. You got the speed to swap to this, but you're probably going to get outranged by other shotguns in some sort of a hold W battle. You know, you got to play around corners and whatnot. It doesn't have that much range compared to other guns that can get a lot of range. Yeah. This weapon currently dominates my kinetic slot, and I see it doing that for a little while. It has been so long since I have felt like a shotgun has actually been worth throwing on outside of a raid damage situation from, like, what, 2 years ago? Taniks and, like, Templar? The only other time I was thrown on a shotgun was for 1-2 punch. Nowadays, I will say that the difference between shotguns and, you know, fusions feels a little bit closer to the point where using either one is probably fine. But conditional just takes the fun to a whole new level. This is the most fun raid exotic Bungie has made in years. Other guns are good. This one is fun and good. If you can get this gun, get it. I beg you. Absolutely well done on this exotic, Bungie. This is fantastic. I cannot praise it enough. If you can get it, get it. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.